Hello and welcome back to George Past the Post. This video is going to look back 1 year on at the 2024 UK general election. Now, before we get going, I could talk about the 2024 UK general election forever, and who knows, perhaps that's what will end up happening. I watched election night with a very good friend of mine. For weeks later, we kept messaging each other saying, "You still looking at the map?" And we were like, "Yes." Because looking at the map of the results, clicking on constituency after constituency, showed the absolute madness of the results. Let me put it this way. If you had said before the election that Labour would lose Leicester South to an independent, that they would lose Leicester East to the Conservatives, there's no way that you would have then said, but Labour's going to win Aylesbury, a seat that they'd never won before. Yeah, they're definitely going to beat Liz Truss in Norfolk. They're going to win the Swindon seats. They're going to win the usual marginals. And they're going to really come back in Scotland. There's no way that all of those things could all happen, and yet that is exactly what happened. So basically, the only pattern on a constituency level was that there was no pattern. Now, obviously, nationally, the result was pretty clear. It was a Labour landslide, but achieved with just around 33% of the vote, only up slightly from 2019. The Conservative vote dropped to just 23%, down from about 43% in 2019, so down about 20 points. Liberal Democrats did very well. They got 72 seats, I believe, which was the highest number of seats of Liberal Democrats ever, since they were called Liberal Democrats. And Reform UK, heard of them, who are, of course, leading in most opinion polls now. 2024, they got slightly more votes than the Liberal Democrats, but they only won 5 seats. It's the sort of result that Liberal Democrats used to get back in the 1980s when they weren't called Liberal Democrats. So there we go. Now, what I want to try and do is to go back and try and remember, if it's possible, what the mood of the country was in 2024, on July the 4th, 2024. Because obviously what tends to happen in life is you look at how things are now, so a year on, you try and that maybe warps your view of what was going on. And because a lot can happen in a year, as we have described. So what I want to try and do is to try and look at why such a Labour landslide was able to occur on such a low vote share. Now, the obvious side, it was made possible because of the first past the post voting system, which, if you found this video, you probably know what first past the post is, but basically you have 650 constituencies, people vote for one candidate, and the candidate with the most votes wins. So you can win a seat, party can win a seat with very low vote share, and that's what happened a lot in 2024. I'm digressing a bit. So my point was, how did all this happen? Well, 2 main factors, I think. The first, and the mood of the country, I think, was generally get rid of the Conservatives. The Conservatives were very unpopular. They'd been in power for 14 years. We had David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and Rishi Sunak. So we had 5, I had to count them out because it's hard to remember. We had 5 Conservative Prime Ministers in that time. And, I won't go into all of the events, but the Conservatives were unpopular. That's point number 1. And people wanted to get rid of them. Second point is the existence, or at least the leadership at the time of Keir Starmer. Now I'll come back to these in a minute, but to sort of unpack them, we have to go back to 2019 and to look at what caused Boris Johnson's Conservative win in 2019. Now there were 3 factors. And again, it's hard to remember because it was so long ago, and politically it's a lifetime ago, even though it's only 6 years. The first was, if you remember, Get Brexit done. That was a slogan which was very effective. People were tired of the never-ending Brexit debates, and Boris Johnson offered a way to just get it done, just pass it, get it done. So that was number one. Number two, at the time, the unpopularity and fear of a Labour government led by Jeremy Corbyn, and on the Brexit issue, ambiguity or uncertainty about what Labour's position may or may not have been. This is important because Labour in 2019, they didn't just lose votes to the Conservatives over Brexit, they also lost votes to the Lib Dems and the Greens in the other direction. So the Lib Dems and the Greens in 2019 offered a very strong pro-Remain stance, if you remember back that far. So that was point number two. And I've actually forgotten what point number three is. So it maybe will come to me. This is the joy of not really having a script and just turning the video on, just talking. So there were those two main factors, and if I remember the third, I shall let you know. Now, of course, the third, I've remembered it. Yeah. Oh, Santa that Boris Johnson there. Oh, I finally remembered it. It's the third thing was what I would call reluctant Remainers. So these are people who would have voted Remain back in 2016. And by the time we get to 2019, you basically have a group of voters, mainly in the south of England, who didn't like Brexit, didn't like Boris Johnson, but voted Conservative anyway. Because they probably wanted to vote Lib Dem, but they couldn't because they thought that perhaps if they voted Lib Dem, you might end up with a situation where the Lib Dems might put Labour and Corbyn into power. So you got those three factors, and basically the Get Brexit Done message, that got people to vote Conservative for the first time ever in certain parts of the country, which propelled them to win seats they'd never won before. The general fear of Labour caused some people who perhaps didn't want to vote Conservative to still do it anyway. And when we get to 2024, those three factors have all gone. So Brexit was done. Boris Johnson was no longer the Conservative Party leader. Jeremy Corbyn was gone and replaced by Keir Starmer. And therefore, that meant that those people I just talked about, the reluctant Remainers, who didn't really want to vote Conservative, didn't have to anymore. Now, my point is this. People were not very frightened of Keir Starmer, which gave people who in the past may have always voted Conservative to stop Labour or to stop Corbyn, it gave lots of people the permission they perhaps were waiting for to not vote Conservative. So, it's all right, I'll vote Lib Dem because in the area I live in, because we want to get rid of the Tories, but also, Starmer's not Jeremy Corbyn. And that applies to people who perhaps had never voted Labour before, but did so. And actually, in a way, perhaps people who voted for Reform. And I forgot a fourth point about 2019, which is obviously the Brexit Party, which is now Reform. They didn't stand in any Conservative-held seats. But this is the problem with looking back. There are so many things that you forget. So my point is actually this. So whether you were voting Labour, Lib Dem, Green, or Reform, and it's weird to put all those groups of people together, perhaps there might have been people in the past who maybe wanted to vote Reform, but the Conservative message of, don't vote Reform, you'll get Labour, that obviously didn't work in 2024 because a lot of people did vote Reform who hadn't done so before. So those are the 2 points that, the Conservatives are very unpopular, but also Starmer wasn't sufficiently, at the time in the election, sufficiently scary to galvanise people to reluctantly vote for the Conservatives despite everything. And so, as a result, what happened. There's also a third factor. The one message in the Conservative campaign that got through, didn't help the Conservatives, but maybe got through, was, you don't need to vote Labour because they're going to win anyway. Don't give them a big majority. Now, when you vote, you can't really vote for the size of a majority or what sort of government. You just vote for your MP and the party. However, now there's an obvious logical problem here, which is this. If everybody who was going to vote Labour didn't vote for Labour because they thought Labour were going to win, nobody would vote for Labour, and so Labour wouldn't have won. But perhaps what that did is sort of the reverse of the Remainer effect I was talking about. People who perhaps didn't really want to vote Labour anyway thought, well, I don't need to vote for them. I can vote for a local independent candidate. I can vote Green, I can vote Lib Dem. Or even, I can vote for my local Conservative MP, who I quite like, is what people might have said. Because, well, Labour are going to win anyway. Now, of course, we'll never know. And a lot of these reasons are all speculative because we can't get inside people's heads. All we know is what actually did happen. And so you have a situation where the vote was very fragmented, but Labour benefited by being the largest, the party with the highest vote share in many, many seats, which in elections gone by, where the Conservative vote would have been much higher, or the non-Labour vote was much higher, Labour wouldn't have managed to win. Now, I think it is worth pointing out that while Labour's vote only went up a bit nationally, that wasn't. It did vary a lot from constituency to constituency. So, in Scotland it went up by a lot. In Labour's vote did go up in the seats that they gained, many of the seats that they gained from the Conservatives, not all, but many. Not as much necessarily as the Conservative vote dropped. So there is a factor of people voting Reform, which perhaps helped Labour to win. But Labour's vote did go up in those places. What brings it down is it lost a significant amount of support in more urban areas and in specifically areas with a larger Muslim population over Gaza. Hence the pattern the non-pattern that I described at the very beginning. As I say, it was an incredible election. And again, if in 2019 you had said, in the aftermath of one of Labour's worst defeats ever, that Labour would win 411 seats in 2024, but they'd only increase their vote share by 1 or 2 points, if that, people wouldn't have believed you. And so that's another point that I will perhaps just finish on, which is that elections do not predict the future. I know it sounds obvious to say, but everyone's, we always try and use elections to predict what's going to happen. 24 election must be treated on its own terms of when it happened and what was in the minds of voters at the time. It was get rid of the Conservatives. So that's why maybe people, despite the Labour Party, voted for them. Maybe people voted Lib Dem who didn't really wouldn't necessarily define themselves as Lib Dems, or the same for the Greens. It was get rid of the Conservatives in most areas. 2024 election only tells you what happened in 2024. It doesn't tell you what's going to happen in 2029. That will be for another video in 4 years time. So thank you for watching. I hope you have learned something interesting, and if not, I've enjoyed talking for almost 14 minutes about the 2024 election. For me, I've actually been quite brief. I hope I made some sense, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.